Today we're talking about the most gangster politician in American history, ladies and gentlemen, Cassius Marcellus Clay, aka the Lion of Whitehall. Whitehall being his family home that he grew up in Kentucky as the son of one of the richest slave owners in all of America. While going to college at Yale to become a lawyer, he would attend a speech from a famous abolitionist.
Thing is, back then, slave ownership, as sad as it was very normal back then.
Yeah.
So he was in a rich, high-profile family from the sounds of it.
By the name of William Lloyd Garrison, and that speech would change the entire trajectory of Cassius Clay's life as well as American history. It is at that moment that Cassius Clay decided he was not only going to be quietly opposed to slavery, but that he was actively going to fight against it. He would be set down the path to become the most influential abolitionist of all time. If you don't know, at this point in time, there's basically two different camps you could fall into for being anti-slavery. You could be an abolitionist or an emancipationist. An emancipationist is somebody that wants to vote it out over time, over the next 5, 10, 20 years, versus an abolitionist, which is somebody that believes we need to end slavery right now, and they're willing to fight about it. And in the case of Cassius Clay, he was willing to fight anyone, anywhere, anytime. You see, Cassius Clay wasn't just some nobody punk kid that went off to college and decided that he didn't like slavery. This was the son of one of the wealthiest slave owners in all of America. So for him to come out and voice anti-slavery views was a huge deal, and it pissed off a lot of people.
Firstly, respect to him, because imagine how hard that must have been to speak out against something you've kind of been born into and know all about,
especially being a white man
as
well.
A white man.
Yeah.
And back then when racism was very looked at as normal between the white folks, should we say, against the black people, African people, back then that's how the world worked. And for him to kind of step outside of that norm and fight against
basically going against his family as well.
He's gone against his family fully.
Yeah.
He probably looks, his family probably disgusted him once he had that mindset to be against it. And wow,
I won't be surprised if they disowned him.
They must have.
Yeah.
As soon as they've got a whiff of it, they definitely would disown them.
So, being that this was the 1820s, what do you do when you're pissed off? You challenge somebody to a duel. So needless to say, the young Cassius Clay found himself partaking in an awful lot of duels, and he never ever lost.
Wow.
So, obviously, he's pretty good at it, and what do you do when you find something you're pretty good at? You want to keep doing it, right? Right. So Cassius Clay starts challenging anyone and everyone to a duel that dares to oppose him. It became common knowledge in his community that Cassius Clay would be willing to fight the wind if it blew from the west and he wanted it to blow from the east. This man went on a dueling rampage, so much so that by the time he graduated college, he was considered to be the deadliest duelist in all of North America.
Hey, yo, how you dueling people? I duel you. Meet me at 12 o'clock in the playground. Last man standing to the death.
Last man.
Mate, that's sick. He's a sick guy.
This guy was putting slave owners in the dirt like he was Johnny Appleseed planting fucking trees. He became known as the deadliest abolitionist of all time. So he graduates from college, goes back home as a lawyer. Shortly after that, his father passes away and leaves everything to Cassius Clay. Cassius Clay immediately frees all of his father's slaves, costing himself $40,000, which is roughly $2 million today. And then he even gives some of the slaves land and money on top of it. Absolutely infuriating the pro-slavery people in Kentucky. So what do you do when half the local population hates your guts? You run for public office, and that's exactly what Cassius Clay did. He served in the Kentucky state legislature from 1835 to 1841, and then finally lost his re-election, to which the pro-slavery crowd breathed a huge sigh of relief because they finally defeated Cassius Clay, or so they thought. Clay immediately starts traveling the country, giving amazing anti-slavery speeches, winning over hearts and minds, and this absolutely infuriates the pro-slavery people.
I'm surprised he was still alive, because back then especially, and you're taking away the whole thought of what slavery, and the white people were very fond of that idea.
Do you think it's because he came from a powerful family and they were very rich as well?
Yeah, he must have just felt really bad for the slaves. He must have
No, I mean in terms of no one's doing anything
to change.
Yeah.
Just generally speaking, because I guess when people are born well off, and if that's if that lifestyle being as you're getting raised, that lifestyle's tamed to you to look as very normal, I guess you don't get the mindset that this is wrong. And on top of that, you got the mindset that you're used to it. You got these people doing everything for you. It's making you money, whatever. You wouldn't go against something that's working in your favor so much. And then obviously for him to do this, I'm surprised they just didn't shoot him or something. I don't know how he dies. You guys tell me, because I don't know anything about him. Did he get murdered, or do they talk about it here? We'll find out.
because they don't know how to stop him. You can't legally stop a guy from talking to people that want to listen to him, and they can't legally kill Cassius Clay in a duel because he's the best duelist on Earth. What do? You've got to illegally kill him.
Yeah,
the problem with that is
go.
they can't find a hitman that's dumb enough to think that they can take out Cassius Clay, so they have to go to the one crevice of the planet where they can find somebody truly insane enough to think that they can do this job. And that man's name was Sam Brown, an assassin from New Orleans. 1834, Russell Cave, Kentucky. Cassius Clay's finishing up one of his world-famous speeches as he pulls out a burlap sack, reaches into the sack and pulls out a holy Bible and says, "For those of you that believe in the laws of God, I make to you this argument against slavery," sets the Bible on the table, reaches back in the sack, pulls out a copy of the U.S. Constitution, and says, "For those of you that believe in the laws of man, I present to you this argument against slavery," sets the Constitution down on the table, drops the burlap sack to the ground and says, "For those of you that believe in neither the laws of God or man, I make to you this argument against slavery," as he pulls out both of his pistols and sets them on the table, which I think we can all agree is gangster as fuck. And at this moment, Sam Brown comes up on stage and shoots Cassius Clay point blank in the chest. Luckily, Cassius Clay never leaves home without his trusted Bowie knife, which resides inside of a metal sheath. And that metal sheath would catch Sam Brown's bullet, saving Cassius Clay's life. At which point, Cassius...
He's so lucky. So his knife caught the bullet.
God was on his side.
If you don't believe in God, that will make you believe in God.
He was like, "Nope, you ain't touching my Donnie."
But that's how you know he's got a like God put him on the planet for this message.
Yeah.
Like he was made to do this change. Like he was made for slavery to.
This was his purpose.
His purpose, yeah. God put him here for that purpose, and nothing will stop it.
Cassius Clay would draw his Bowie knife and charge Sam Brown. 6 of Sam Brown's friends in the audience tried to stop Cassius Clay. He would fight his way through all 6 of them, making his way to Sam Brown, promptly stabbing him in the chest, and then turning him into a Mr. Potato Head by cutting off his nose, lopping off his ear, and gouging out one of his eyes. Then the 6 men recovered and were able to peel Clay off of him. Not knowing what to do, knowing they couldn't stop Cassius Clay forever, they panicked, probably for fear that Cassius Clay was going to start shoving this guy's facial features up his ass next. They did the only thing they could come up with to get the two apart. They picked up their friend Sam Brown, threw him over a 7-foot-high stone wall. He fell down an embankment and into a creek bed to finally get Cassius Clay away from him. Somehow, Sam Brown survived, but not only was he lucky for that, he was also dumb as fuck because he then decided to take Cassius Clay to court because apparently after Cassius Clay stabbed him the first time, they were even on the whole assassination attempt thing. So Cassius Clay should go to prison for mayhem. So Cassius Clay calls upon his older cousin, one of the best lawyers on the planet that had never lost in open court with over 40 years of experience, Henry Clay. Henry Clay goes in.
These are got some powerful family, innit? All the Clays, boy. They don't mess around.
With the Clays.
Imagine that you never lost a court case in 40 years.
The court, and his entire defense for his cousin is, and I quote, "Your Honor, this is just standard behavior for a Kentuckian." And the judge is just like, "You're innocent. Free to go. That's it. Best court case ever." Literally walks in and just goes,
"I thought this was America. Huh? This is America? I'm sorry, I thought this was America."
So after Cassius Clay was found innocent, Henry Clay decides that he's going to run for president, and Cassius is going to help him campaign. Cassius is going to tour the country, giving speeches, saying, "Hey, vote for my cousin." Here's the rule with that. Henry Clay told him he's only allowed to tour the northern states because he's actually legitimately concerned that if he sends Cassius to the south, he's going to shoot so many fucking slave owners in duels that it could be considered voter fraud. So Henry Clay ends up losing the presidential election, and Cassius moves on to his next life adventure, which is becoming an author and writing anti-slavery news articles. The problem with that was none of the newspapers were willing to publish him, so he says, "Fuck you, I'll start my own newspaper, The True American." Now,
he don't fuck about. That's how you gotta do it, though. When the world's against you, you're against me, cool, I'm gonna fucking do it myself. I don't need you.
Yeah.
That's how all the top people are.
And look at the impact he's had as well.
I bet you because of him, so many people released their slaves at the time and stuff.
As I'm sure you can imagine, starting an anti-slavery newspaper in fucking Kentucky in 1845 was not very popular, and his business would receive death threats pretty much every day, some of which were written in blood. So Cassius Clay, in true Cassius Clay fashion, says, "Fuck it, I guess we're gonna fight about it." He then proceeds to up-armor his entire business and his printing office. He covers the entire front of the office in a large iron sheet. He installs several cannons down corridors, stocks the entire thing with loaded guns, and rigs it to explode. Here's the thing, he also doesn't expect his employees to fight to the death for him, so he installs an escape hatch and instructs them to escape if anything goes down, because he's going to fight the entire mob by himself. How's he going to do that? As soon as you walk in the only door to get into that printing office, you find yourself in a long, narrow corridor with iron on each side, just wide enough for a single man to get through. Cassius Clay is going to stand in that narrow corridor and fight the entire mob one man at a time.
What does that remind you of? If nothing, I'll remind you.
Oh, that film.
300.
I was gonna say.
300 when the
narrow walls.
The massive armies come in, and then they narrow it down to that thing, and they're destroying everyone. Then they only lost because they moved away from that.
Sparta!
And the guy snitched on the other entrance. Yep. Otherwise, if it's narrow like that, that's the way you got to do it.
Yeah.
Literally the mentality of, if you have a problem, take a number, I'll kill you in a minute. This man recreated the entire...
Oh, what was I saying? I literally just said that. Because we watched it recently. Yeah. We watched that like a couple months ago, that's why.
Fully with 300 Spartans, except he's going to do it all by himself. If you think fucking with John Wick's dog is a bad idea, the last thing you want to do is fuck with Cassius Clay's printing press, because this man is determined to defend the freedom of speech with the right to bear arms at any cost. Obviously, this escalates to Cassius Clay defeating an entire mob single-handedly, right? Wrong. The mob, being full of, super brave pro-slavery men that know they're doing the right thing, do the honorable brave thing and wait till Cassius Clay is bedridden with typhoid fever, so they know he isn't going to show up. They show up to his business at night and burn the place to the ground because they're a bunch of fucking bitches. Now, Cassius Clay recovers from typhoid fever. He reestablishes a newspaper in Cincinnati, Ohio, which is an anti-slavery stronghold. The only problem with that is, being an anti-slavery stronghold, there's not going to be any conflict, and that's fucking boring, so Cassius Clay moves on to another life adventure, volunteering in the Mexican-American War. While serving in the Mexican-American War, he would be a captain leading a group of Kentucky soldiers, and they would be captured pretty much immediately, and he would spend the duration of the entire war as a POW. While serving as a POW, some of the men under his command would escape, meaning that the Mexican military was then going to put the rest of his unit to death. Cassius Clay said, hey, don't kill my men, just kill me and my other fellow officers. We're the ones in charge. It's our fault that those men escaped. It's our responsibility. Please let the lower enlisted men go home. The Mexican military was so impressed by this that they decided to spare everyone, including Cassius Clay, and he would return home a war hero. Returning home from the...
They're like, you're a real man. We like you. Because he's got honor. And that's what a lot of people have lost these days, is honor and how to be a man. It's all this Gen Z shit, man. He was a proper definition of what a man should be.
A leader.
A leader, yeah.
The war in 1848, he didn't really know what to do, so he starts giving his famous speeches again, this time leveraging his newfound title as a war hero. So obviously it doesn't take long for him to piss everybody off. He faces yet another assassination attempt. This time 6 brothers from a wealthy slave-owning family show up, the Turner brothers. They show up with clubs and knives and guns, and they beat the living shit out of Cassius Clay with the clubs. They stabbed him multiple times. Cassius Clay whips out his trusted Bowie knife, starts opening up these brothers like they're fucking Amazon packages, making his way to the lead brother and stabbing him an excessive amount of times. We don't know how many times, but we do know it was a lifetime supply. Killing the lead brother, ending the assassination attempt, Cassius Clay would fall to the ground, nearly dead, and this would be the closest anybody ever came actually killing Cassius Clay. When he was
not gonna lie, Cassius Clay was like the main character. You know, in games, like you got the main character, like he was like...
He's the main character.
He's the main
Why
character.
do you think the brothers tried to kill him?
They were
it's doing
wealthy.
Too much.
They were wealthy slave owners, so obviously they're saying you're fucking up our business.
Oh yes,
fuck
because
that,
he
we're
must
coming
be
for
turning
yourselves.
a lot of people.
Yeah, they wanted to take him out because he's fucking around with their shit.
Put a bad rep on them as well.
Asked about it later on in life, all he said was, I felt the utmost indignation, which translates to, I was fucking annoyed. This man almost died from an assassination attempt, and he has the same attitude towards it that I have towards fucking fruit flies, okay? This dude is so metal, he deserves his own spot on the periodic table of elements. Cassius Clay then makes a full recovery from his injuries, starts giving his speeches again. 1853, he donates a large chunk of his land to John Fee, who uses it to found Berea College, the first co-educational and multiracial college in the South ever. Fast forward.
Multiracial, so all the slaves back then will have a college to go to, I'm assuming. Well, as long as they're not slaves and they can actually go. So that's good, because that started the mix of, ethnicities. Because back then there wasn't any of that.
Yep, segregation.
Forward to 1860, Cassius
Segregation,
Clay is
yeah.
giving speeches in Illinois where he meets a politician by the name of Abraham Lincoln.
Oh, Abraham Lincoln.
And they get along great. Cassius Clay is then slotted to become Abraham Lincoln's vice president. However, he's a little bit too Cassius Clay to be an actual big-name politician like that, so they give the job to Hannibal Hamlin, and Cassius Clay becomes the ambassador to Russia. 1861 rolls around, the Civil War breaks out. Cassius Clay is in Russia. Cassius Clay not only convinces Russia to not side with the Confederates, but he convinces Russia to tell Great Britain and France that if they so much as recognize the Confederacy, Russia will go to war with them. And this was a humongous step that nobody talks about in the winning of the Civil War.
This guy don't fuck around. Imagine he's persuading Russia. Who is this man? This guy is...
He's a gangster.
That's mad.
And it is 100% because of Cassius Clay. Fast forward to 1862. Abraham Lincoln wants to appoint Clay a major general in the Union Army. Cassius Clay publicly refuses the President of the United States, saying that he's not going to do it until the President signs the Emancipation Proclamation freeing the slaves of the South. Cassius Clay is literally the man that bullied Abraham Lincoln into prematurely signing the Emancipation Proclamation before he wanted to. And nobody talks about it. Fast forward again to 1865, wow. The Union wins the Great American Scrimmage, the slaves are freed. Cassius Clay has achieved his lifelong goal at the age of 55, bringing an end to slavery in the United States of America. He then goes back to Russia again to serve as ambassador.
Do they have a statue of this man or something? They fucking need to have
a
couple
so
of statues
crazy,
of
isn't
him,
it? You were born into a rich, wealthy family who... used slaves.
It was very normal.
You basically went against your family. You went against
the world.
Yeah, you went against your own people, and you're getting death threats.
People tried to assassinate you.
It's just so crazy.
Near-death
and now
experience.
Look where he is. Well,
he got there in his life work. He accomplished right at the end.
He literally had a purpose in life.
And he's the reason we're probably as mixed as we are today.
Yeah.
As crazy as it is.
Until 1869, and while he is there, he helps to broker the purchase of Alaska. This man is probably the most influential person in American history that you've never heard of. After returning home from Russia, Cassius Clay would live out the rest of his days in Whitehall until the age of 80 years old, where he would be declared clinically insane, in hindsight most likely due to a severe amount of PTSD, as well as potentially dementia. He didn't die from it, he lived on for quite a bit longer. He just picked up a new hobby of fucking with the local sheriff because he was crazy now. Over the course of the next decade, Clay and the sheriff would have multiple run-ins that would be concluded when the sheriff and 7 deputies were repelled from Whitehall when Clay utilized his home defense cannon that he had at the top of his stairwell. At that point, the local sheriff would inform the local judge he will not be returning to Whitehall to tangle with Cassius Clay anymore unless the judge was willing to dispatch an entire company of the local militia to accommodate him. Then in 1900, 2 men would break into Whitehall, and Cassius Clay at the age of 89 would manage to kill both of them, one by gunshot and one, yet again, with his trusted bow.
The guy's nearly 90. He's going on 100 years old and he shot one guy, and with his trusty bow knife from back in the day when he was like 19 years old, he still got it at nearly 90.
Yeah, it saved his life. Of course he's going to keep it.
It's still got that bullet dent from when it saved his life. Fucking slice this guy up like an Amazon package. What's next?
Bowie knife. Then in 1903, at the age of 92, Cassius Clay would die of natural causes, or as they called it back then, general exhaustion, which is the most gangster way on the planet to go out. Literally just, I'm tired now. Peace.
I'm
done.
Then
he left.
I'm pretty tired. I'll go home now.
In conclusion, when it comes to famous historical household names, there's always another man or woman lurking behind the scenes in the shadows that's deemed too rough around the edges to be in the spotlight, yet they contribute just as much, if not more, to the movement. These men and women are willing to do horrific things for terrific reasons, and when it came to Abraham Lincoln and the abolition of slavery, that man's name was Cassius Marcellus Clay, the most gangster politician in American history.